Hello, hello. How is everyone doing? Alrighty. Cool, guys. Let's wait for a few more people to join, then we will start. Display capture. Different one. Alrighty. Hello. How's everyone doing? How are you guys doing? Good Saturday evening for you guys. 200 videos, great. I know. There's another one. This guy got a 120K offer in DevOps. So maybe we should get him as well. Although he's already done one podcast. Like he's from cohort 2. Uski pehli job bhi thi, now he's got his second job. So maybe not as interesting a story. All right. Projects, middle class voter on BJP. I think BJP won, right? Good for them. I have no idea. I'm not from Delhi, so I didn't vote. But yeah, Node.js streams soon enough. Ankur. All right, let me pause chat. Motivation is going down. Unfortunately, I can help you, motivate you a little bit. But then again, that'll last for a day. So, self motivation is very important, guys. I'm actually DM you the bounty. You might be busy. Can you mail it at headexdev@gmail.com? They'll clear it. All right. DevOps role. I think you sent me your some page as well, right? I saw it. I forwarded it to Rahul, who's helping us refer. So if he likes it, you'll get an email from them. I think 3 people have been referred abhi tak for intern roles. Full time wale he'll refer after he joins the company. He told me 13th Feb he's joining. So uske baad he'll refer full time people. All right. Any more questions? Projects. There's one interesting one coming on the channel soon. It's cloning photo AI, which is it's a good product, and I've over-engineered it a lot. And it's also in a different stack. This time it's in Python plus Fast API. So maybe that's an interesting one. It also covers Celery, if some of you have heard of it, which is a common stack, that some companies are hiring for, which is why I changed the stack on that one. So that'll be an interesting one. I'm also trying to polish this one. It's launchable. That's why it's taking some time. But yeah, that might be a good project. Other than that, we have a few projects in the cohort, but I'm happy to change them to, for them to be more relevant, slash, aajkal jo use ho raha hai. When I wrote them initially, I wrote something random, but, we'll decide, just like Brainly, we decided fairly randomly. We'll decide a random idea and, start building it. All right. Slides for today. This one's important. So I would urge everyone to pay attention. Wrong one. There we go. These are the slides for today. Important concept, very needed. I think, can you stop the hand raises? I will have to make you co-host. So let me do that. Make Ankur co-host, pin myself, and move me on the screen here. All righty. Let's start a little early. 8:03. So as I said, let me give high level context. Docker is super important. After it's a DevOps concept. It isn't really a full stack concept, but any full stack project that you're building, when you're deploying it, when you're adding instructions to run it locally, basically a very important thing you have to do is create Docker files for every module, project, package that you're creating. So if you have a monorepo which has 2 front ends and 1 backend, or five backends, 3 front ends, you should containerize it all. What does containerizing mean? We'll come to. But as always, before we start, let's do a poll of how many of us already know this. Let me take you through quickly. Kya karna hai? Containerization, installing Docker, what are images, what are containers, port mapping, some common Docker commands. What is a Docker file? How do you create one? Building images, running images, passing in environment variables to images, some more Docker commands, pushing to Docker Hub. Layers, which is a slightly more advanced concept. Optimizing Docker files, networks, and volumes. That's it. How many of us already know this? Let's do a poll. Do you already understand everything that's present on the screen? Yes or no? All right. So that's a 29%, 30% yes, 70% no. Yes, वालों को तो ये कहूँगा, very simple class, might make sense for you to drop off right now. Or what you can do is, let me think of a project related to Docker. Oh, is there Docker Compose here? There was Docker Compose. What I was going to suggest was read about Docker Compose, but I'm assuming you also know that. So what can you build? Maybe, okay, do this. Last week, we built a CI/CD pipeline for a monorepo. Let me show you. 1 second. Is my mic correct?
नो ऑडियो भैया. नो ऑडियो फ्रॉम योर साइड भैया. नो ऑडियो फ्रॉम योर साइड भैया.
Beautiful. Thank you. I was muted for the past 2 minutes. It's in the recording, so you can go there. What I was saying was, okay, people who already understand Docker, which was around 30% of the lot, try to go through last week's assignment. This is last week's assignment. We wrote a very long bash script to redeploy our application. What is happening? Try to redeploy your application again, and this time try to use Docker. So containerize your application, deploy it to Docker Hub, and pull it on the machine and redeploy. And if you want to look for reference, this is one repository that you can look at for reference. This is for people who already know Docker. This is a reference repository. This is last week's repository. So the people who already know can go here. The people who don't, if this is the first time you're learning Docker, let's get right into it. What I was saying was, okay, before we get into Docker, let's understand why do you even need Docker? Why did this become very popular? There are some technologies that feel very common to us these days. For example, React or Express or Docker or Kubernetes. But a few years ago, they did not exist. There was not everyone was talking about Docker, what it is and why is it used. So back in the day, I think 2013 or so, Docker was introduced. Why was it introduced? Practically, for these are three common use cases I've seen it being used the most. Number one, it is used for something called container orchestration. Docker lets you create containers, and there is something called container orchestration we will eventually get to. But this is facilitated thanks to the concept of containers. Containers is not a Docker specific concept. There are other container runtimes also. Docker is the most popular one. So Docker you use to create containers that facilitates something called container orchestration. What is container orchestration? We will come to in a few weeks. Second is, which is the most important use case of Docker, running processes in an isolated environment. To add to that, इसका मतलब ये है कि अभी तक this is how we have been running our. If I ask you today कि run MongoDB locally or start a Node.js process locally and you have a fresh laptop, you first have to install NVM, then you have to install Node, and then you run the command node index.js. There are a few steps you have to go through based on your operating system. This code also runs directly on your Mac machine. If your friend sends you an index.js file, which has some vulnerable code, he's reading your files and pushing them to a database. So you will run their code, he will be able to read your full file system. Docker lets you run processes in an isolated environment. So if this is your Mac machine and your friend sends you a JavaScript file, please run this locally. So don't directly run it on your Mac machine. Don't do this. Run it inside what's called a Docker container. How do you create a Docker container? How do you run a node index.js here is a different question. But one use case of Docker is if you get a file from someone, don't run it directly on your Mac machine. If the file ka code looks like reading everything from your file system and pushing it to a database, तो अगर आप इसको यहाँ run करोगे, if you run it inside the Docker container, it will not be able to read your host machine ka file system. It will read the Docker machine ka file system. Docker containers have their own file system. एक छोटी सी मशीन होती है जो रन हो जाती है. What does it mean when people say कि we are running a Docker container? It means not technically but theoretically कि एक छोटी और मशीन स्टार्ट हो गई. Is it like a virtual machine, Harkirat? It is not like a virtual machine. It is much more lightweight, but it's very similar. Okay, if you want to run a process and give it limited resources, give it limited access, you want to make sure it is not able to access your machine ka file system, you can start that process in a Docker container. Docker facilitates that. Name itself says container. Container का मतलब क्या है कि सारा कोड यहाँ contained रहेगा. All the code will be contained over here. It will not run directly on your machine. You will not run node index.js. You will run something like Docker run index.js, let's say. You will run something like this. And what will this do? It will create a container. And इस container के अंदर index.js run होगी. Index.js will run inside this mini machine, this small container. That is the second use case of Docker, running processes in an isolated environment. What is an isolated environment? This thing over here is an isolated environment. And third, and one very commonly used one, is starting projects or auxiliary services locally. You might have seen that whenever we are in a class, I run Postgres locally by running this command. Docker run -e something -t -p kuch ganda Postgres. This is how I run Postgres locally. I do not install it natively on my Mac. I run Postgres inside a Docker container. So whenever you want to run Postgres, MongoDB, Redis, any such service, you can install it directly on your machine. You can install Postgres directly on your machine, or you can start it inside a Docker container. There are benefits of starting it inside the Docker container. Simplest benefit being that the command is very simple. This is the command for running Postgres locally. This is the command for running Redis locally. Very similar commands. Sirf last की चीज change हो रही है. Here I'm running Postgres. Here I'm running Redis. But everything else is the same. I don't have to go through official docs and understand how to install Redis. So the third important use case is starting projects and auxiliary services locally. What is an auxiliary service? A database, Redis, Kafka. What is a project? If there is an open source project, if you want to run cal.com locally, so every open source project, when you look at, it will have two ways to start. If I go to this project called P5JS web editor and I look at the contributor docs, तो contributor docs में अगर मैं installation में जाता हूं कि how can I run this project locally, so it gives me two ways. Manual installation, like we have been doing until now. So if you want to run this project locally आज, you can go through manual installation, or you can go through Docker installation. A good open source project should have this second part. Why? Because then you have to run a single command to start the project locally, something like this. Now, what is this command we'll come to? But a single command will start this big open source project locally on my machine. Single command. Versus if I go through manual steps, then I first have to install Node.js on my machine. Then I have to do a npm install. Then I have to run MongoDB alag se. Then I have to run this specific script. Then I run npm run start. There are 6 commands I have to run. But अगर मैं Docker use करूंगा, then I have to run a single command. So these are the 3 reasons you might want to use Docker. There is another set of slides here called actionable Docker. उसकी video भी है, I'll post it. If you want a simpler understanding of Docker, then you can go here. Just has 6 slides. We'll have a video for this. We are diving a little bit deeper into Docker, but a lot of times you just use it as a tool, just like you use Node.js as a tool, or Python as a tool. You use Docker as a tool. उसके लिए वो simpler video भी है. This is a slightly in-depth video. Great. Before we get into Docker, let's understand what are containers. What is containerization? It's just a buzzword. जल्दी से समझ लेते हैं. It's almost like this. कि there is some Docker runtime that is running a bunch of these containers isolated from your machine. Containers are a way to package and distribute software applications in a way that it makes them easy to deploy and run consistently on different environments. Slightly loaded statement, but समझने की कोशिश करते हैं. Containers are a way to package and distribute software. What was I running when I ran Docker run something? I was running this packaged software locally. So what does Docker let you do? It lets you create containers, which are a way to package and distribute software applications in a way that makes it easy to deploy and run consistently across different environments. अगर आप Windows machine पर run कर रहे हो, if you are running it on a Windows machine, still the command remains the same. If you're running it on Linux machine, commands remain the same. So consistently across different operating systems, you can run a single command to start Postgres locally. They allow you to package an application along with all its dependencies and libraries into a single unit that can be run on any machine without a container runtime, with a container runtime such as Docker. What do containers let you do? एक पूरा सॉफ्टवेयर पैकेज हो गया. When I'm running this, when I'm starting Postgres, I am not just getting the Postgres का source code. I am also getting a file system around it. I'm also getting networking capabilities for me to connect to it. It's almost a small machine that is running inside my very big Mac machine that is running Postgres. So they allow you to package a software. Postgres has been packaged somewhere in Docker along with all of its dependencies and libraries. If today you containerize your application, your Node.js application, you will add Node.js in your container. You will add NPM in your container. You will add all of your dependencies, Express in your container. They allow you to package an application along with all of its dependencies into a single unit that can be run on any machine. Basically, अगर मैंने आज एक Express project लिखा, if I wrote a index.js file today, I can run it locally like this, node index.js, because I have node on my machine. If you try to run it, if you don't have node, नहीं चलेगा. But all of us can run it by running docker run harkirath/index, something like this. By the end of the class, we'll do this. I'll create an image. I will deploy it. So just like I could run Redis locally, you will be able to run my project locally on your machine without having Node.js installed. डालना है डालो Node.js, नहीं भी डालोगे तो भी चल जाएगा. As long as you have Docker installed, you'll be able to run my software. I packaged my software such a way that whoever is running this, those people will be able to run an index.js file, which means उनके पास Node.js भी पहुंच जाएगी. This image of mine, this container of mine will have Node.js, will have my dependencies, will have Express, will have my index.js file, and you will be able to run it locally in a single command. Why do you need containers? Everyone has a different operating system. So, अगर containers exist नहीं करते, if containers don't exist, then I will have to send you this index.js file. You will have to install Node.js on your Mac machine, on your Windows machine separately and run it separately. That's a little bit of a challenge, nothing too complicated, but सबका operating system different hai. As this becomes a very complicated project, which has Ruby on Rails also, Rust also. So you will have to install all of that on your host machine. To avoid that, containers help. Containers में मैं सब कुछ इसके अंदर ही डाल दूंगा. I will put all my dependencies, including Rust, Ruby on Rails, and Node.js in this image. You will run one command. It will start running for you. It will not install Rust on your local machine. When you are doing this, ऐसा नहीं हो कि Rust आपकी machine में install हो जाएगा. Rust will be already part of this mini machine. Rust will already be part of this mini machine. When I run this Postgres command, docker run something Postgres, Postgres मेरी machine में नहीं आ जाता. Postgres doesn't install in my machine. It just starts a container which has Postgres. Steps to run a project can vary based on an operating system. For example, I showed you a bunch of steps over here. The manual installation step. This will be different for different operating systems. But if you use Docker, it will be the same for everyone. And lastly, extremely hard to keep track of dependencies as projects grows. अगर आपने एक project बना दिया, which has Ruby on Rails, which has Rust, which has Golang, which has Node.js, and now a new developer comes, that new developer needs to install all four of these things, and only then can they start the project. But if you have containerized your application, that new developer just needs to do docker run, the name of the application or something similar, and उनके पे चलने लग जाएगा. They don't need to install Rust on their machine. So the other big benefit is that when you join a new company or whatever, you're a new employee, it's just easier to run the code base using Docker, and eventually you can install Rust and everything. But initially, And if you want to contribute to an open source project also, easy to use the Docker file and run it. This is a pictorial representation of it. This is my Mac machine. I can run multiple containers. So one of them, let's say, running MongoDB. One of them running my backend Node.js application. One of them running my front-end React application. Benefits of using containers. Let you describe your configuration in a single file. So, अभी we'll start to write containers. अभी तक तो मैं ऊपर से बता रहा हूँ. I'm just saying कि, if you run Docker run 100x devs/app, so it will start running for you. Question is, how did I create this image? And you create that image by creating a configuration file, a Docker file. We will learn what that is today. You can run code in isolated environments, makes the setup of local open source projects locally very simple, makes installing auxiliary services like databases, Postgres, Redis very easy. Okay? This is a small command you can try, but you probably don't have Docker right now. So let's try this later. Let's go to the next slide. History of Docker, बंदे ने बनाई थी, बहुत बढ़िया बन गया. Company is doing really well. They were a VC-backed company. It's not like containers are owned by Docker, but containers have become synonym with Docker because Docker is the biggest container runtime today. But they've been doing this, started a few years ago, and now have become a very big popular company. Great, cool. Now let's start to install Docker locally and go from there. So take 2 to 3 minutes and try to install Docker locally. Easiest thing you can do, go to this page and look at your operating system. For example, I am on a Mac machine, Linux distributions. This is thing for installed. Installed. यहाँ पे जाके मैं करता. If I would have done it, I would have installed it using Docker Desktop basically, which is something like this. It is a GUI, graphical user interface for starting it. So you can go to this page, docs.docker.com/desktop, and just download it for your machine. Let's say Mac. Here it said Docker Desktop for Mac with Apple Silicon, Docker Desktop for Mac with Intel chip. If you're on a Windows machine, it will say Docker Desktop for Windows machine. Just download it, run it, install it. And by the end of it, you should see a graphical user interface that looks like this. Don't worry about this GUI, but it's just a software. Just like, whatever, a GTA game or a VS Code. Docker Desktop looks something like this. You would probably never use this after it. If you want, you can, but everything will do via the terminal. It's just an easy way to install Docker locally. So another 2 minutes, install this locally, and by the end, confirm कि आपके machine में you can run the Docker command. If you can run the Docker command on your machine, then you are good to go. If you can't run the Docker command, that means the installation has failed. Okay? So take 2 minutes. I'll look at Q&A until then. Try to install Docker locally. I need to work on a project about distributed Prometheus. Yeah, so great question. Beautiful question. Prometheus is pull-based, right? Sorry, push-based. You are pushing your metrics somewhere and they're getting pulled by Prometheus. So what happens? Prometheus is pull-based, my bad. You expose your metrics on a specific endpoint and then Prometheus engine is pulling it every 10 seconds or whatever. This is great if you have a single application deployed in one place. This becomes a problem if you have a distributed application deployed in 10 different places. Machines are coming up, going down. So in that case, what you do is either you can use the push approach, which means that metrics are getting pushed to Prometheus. Prometheus is not pulling them. You can do that. Slides mein hai yahan pe. We have slides on Prometheus in project.hynix.com. Go there. It has both the approaches. And so if you're doing just that, if you have an auto scaling group, machines going up and down, then you can do that. If you're using Kubernetes, so Kubernetes has a easy integration into Prometheus. So as your containers go up and down, you can directly push to Prometheus. That's a great question. Go through Prometheus slides. We have covered this. Sir, DevOps course will update. When will update on the website? Should have updated. Need 5 minutes. Take 5 minutes. What exactly is an image? We are coming to it very soon. There is a slide on images and containers. Very soon we'll come to it. I understand everything, but face difficulty solo coding. A lot of people say that I have not faced that. I guess I faced that initially. तो इसमें ये होता है, just practice a lot and eventually some point will come and this will go away. Is ngrok similar to Docker? No, they're significantly different. Ngrok is a tunnel to your machine. It has nothing to do with containers or starting containers, so they're significantly different. Remaining part of previous class. क्या रह गया था भाई previous class में? पिछले तो 4.5 घंटे की थी. Was there something I missed in the last class? The file is like 500 MB on Windows. Could be. I wouldn't be surprised. How to create something like Docker? That's a good question. They're open source, so you can look at their code base. You'll probably have to understand machines first, Linux first, containers first, and then create your own runtime. I don't know. It's out of my pay scale, honestly, to create something like Docker. Podman is an alternative to Docker, someone is asking. How to start it? How to start what? Docker locally? I mean, just install it locally on your machine and we'll go from there. How does range-based downloads work? What does that mean? Sorry, I have no idea. Hearing this for the first time. Give me some context. If recordings for DevOps are not updated on aberrant.com, they should be on harkira.classics.co.in. And Ankur, just make a note. Please fix that by tonight. Cool. Let's proceed, guys. Or maybe take another minute. But what do you have to ensure? You have to ensure that Docker command आपके machine पे चल रही है. If the Docker command is running on your machine, you're good to go. If not, then we have a problem. So let's do a poll. If 80% are good, then we'll proceed. Are you guys good? Can we start learning Docker? Can you run the Docker command locally? Is this command running on your machine? Right? 70%. Another 2 minutes. Karlo install, no pressure, and then we'll start. Maybe until then, let me proceed with the slides a little bit. Installing Docker, inside Docker. हाँ ठीक है. So while it is installing on your machine, मैं एक architecture बता देता हूँ Docker का. What exactly do you install on your machine when you're installing Docker? And Docker has 3 major parts. So I'm going to explain this and then we'll start to code. The architecture of Docker, or what you're installing locally on your machine, it has something called the Docker engine, which is the most important thing you are installing locally. What is the Docker engine? Name is giving it away. The Docker engine is what is handling creation of containers, running of containers. ये वो software है मोटा मोटा that is able to run containers, able to create containers. When you install Docker locally, the first thing you install is the Docker engine, which has nothing to do with this Docker command that you're running. This is a different component. This is the Docker CLI, command line interface. This is the Docker engine, which is the thing that is taking care of all of this. It is a software that you run locally that that is starting these containers or start creating these images. As an application or full stack developer, you need to be comfortable with the following terminologies: Docker engine, Docker CLI, Docker registry. ये 3 चीजें बहुत important हैं to know. What is the Docker engine? Docker engine is an open source containerization technology that allows developers to package software into containers. जो चीज हम अभी तक बात कर रहे थे कि containers are a very nice thing, isolated environment, you can create it, share it, distribute it. Docker engine lets you do that. You have the Docker engine running locally on your machine that is taking care of creating containers and running containers. Containers क्या होते हैं? We already know. Docker CLI, command line interface, is the command line interface that lets you talk to the Docker engine. So effectively, when I run, if this is my Mac machine, I can open a terminal in my Mac machine. This is the terminal. And here I can run a Docker command. Docker run MongoDB, let's say. This command is nothing but an HTTP request. I don't think it's an HTTP request, it's a different socket request to the Docker engine. And then the Docker engine is what is running MongoDB locally. So hopefully that's simple enough to understand. Okay, this is the command line interface. This is the Docker engine that is actually starting your containers. And the third important thing that you need to know is something called the registry. The Docker registry. Have we heard this word before? registry. When I go to npmjs.com and look at npmjs.com/packages/express, this is the Express code base somewhere out in the world that we install locally. When I run npm install express, what happens? From this npm.js registry, this code comes locally to my machine and it gets installed in the node modules folder. यही होता है. If I create a fresh node project, run the command npm install express, what actually happens when I run this? This code that is present in this registry comes locally to my machine. If I go to node modules/express, the files that I'm seeing over here are the same files that are present over here. So the registry is a place where people push their code. GitHub को भी sort of a registry कह सकते हो. GitHub, not technically called a registry, but you can call it a code का, place where you're pushing code. Same is true for npm. This is a npm.js registry. Similarly, there is a pip registry for Python, or a cargo registry or a Rust registry जहां Rust के projects आते हैं. Docker also has something similar called the Docker registry. Here, when I am running docker run mongo locally, ये mongo image क्या होता है, we'll come to, but this container comes from somewhere to my machine. I don't have MongoDB running on my Mac machine. मैंने install ही नहीं किया कभी. I want to run it locally. So I want to pull this image from somewhere. That somewhere is the Docker registry. Just like npm.js is the registry for pushing Node.js packages. This hub.docker this hub.docker.com is the registry for storing containers, or more technically Docker images. जैसे आप अपना कोड यहां पुश करते हो GitHub पे, you push your code to GitHub. Yes sir. If you ever create a library, your own library, you will push it to npm.js. Yes sir. So similarly, if you ever create your image in the future, खुद की भी बनाओगे अगर image, you will push it over here to hub.docker.com/_/mongo, because these are, parent repositories, but we have a few of them on 100x devs/something. So it's very similar to GitHub, very similar to npm.js, but what you are pushing and what people are pulling is a Docker image. It is not actual source code. It is not a library like npm.js. It is a Docker image. Image क्या होती है? We are coming to, but architecture मोटा मोटा ऐसा है. If I run locally docker run mongo, if in my terminal I run this command docker run mongo, what was the first thing that it printed? Unable to find image mongo locally. मुझे image locally नहीं मिल रही है, so it will start to fetch it from Docker Hub. It will start to, what did it say? Pulling it from library/mongo. And now it is taking some time to get it from the Docker registry to my machine. When you run this command for the first time, docker run mongo, it hits the engine, tells the engine कि भाई ये image run करनी है. Engine is like, I don't have this image anywhere. So it hits the Docker Hub registry, gets the image from there and runs it locally. As you can see, unable to find image, pulling image, and then started to run it. These are the default MongoDB logs that you see. तो मेरी machine पे MongoDB run होने लग गया without having to go through the installation steps of Mongo. I did not have to go to mongodb.com, go to the installation steps and run 5 different commands. I ran a single command, docker run mongo. MongoDB started to run locally. It is running. You still can't access it. We'll come to why that is. But this is all that you need to run an image locally. Thousands of images are out there. When you run npm install express, you are getting a very nice repository or whatever, a HTTP server that someone has created locally on your machine. Similarly, when you run docker run mongo, same thing is happening, but you are not getting a few files. When I do npm install express, all I get back is a bunch of these files. When I run Docker run Mongo, I get a full ass container. I don't get a container technically, I get an image. But अभी के लिए कहने के लिए आपको एक पूरा ऑपरेटिंग सिस्टम टाइप मिल जाता है. A small machine कहीं का पूरा code comes and that starts to run locally on your machine. I am not running MongoDB directly inside my Mac. I am running MongoDB in a container. ये MongoDB container start हो जाएगा मेरी मशीन पे if I run the command docker run mongo. So what are the three parts of Docker when you install it or when you run something? The CLI, the engine, and the registry, which right now we are using the official Docker registry, hub.docker.com. But AWS has its own, GCP has its own. Just like GitHub is there, GitLab is there, and you know what, Bitbucket is there. There are various places you can push your source code. There are various places you can push your Docker images. Hub.docker.com is the official Docker one, but AWS has its own. It's called ECR, Elastic Container Registry, I think. I could be wrong. And then GCP has its own, DigitalOcean has its own. Each one of them have their container registry. What is this called? This is called a container registry. What is this? This is like a library registry. What is GitHub? It is like a source code registry. Registry क्या होता है? A place where people push something that other people can pull. The registry we are dealing with today is the Docker registry. ये समझ आया? When I run the command docker run mongo, how does it, what happens under the hood? I hit the Docker engine, get the image from the registry and start MongoDB locally. We can test also कि MongoDB चल रहा है कि नहीं. Maybe we'll do that very soon. But a good starting point might be to run this command locally and ensure कि MongoDB तो चल गया मेरी machine पे. I am able to use Docker as expected. Now let's do another poll and see how many of us were able to run Docker locally on our machines. If Docker is working for you, then I'm 100% sure Docker run Mongo is also working for you. And you should see very similar output on your side. Were you able to do it? All right. 80% is decent, not great, but 20% को मैं कहूँगा कि I'm sure you're facing some problems locally, which maybe it installs very soon. If it doesn't, you know, after the class, try it. अभी तक we have run a single command. Docker run Mongo. Question is, Harkirat, how do I know if this is working? Maybe ये नहीं चल रहा हो. So we can try it. Let's run Docker run Mongo. Let's open MongoDB Compass. Some of you might have it, some of you might not. If you don't have it, ignore. But if you have MongoDB Compass locally, which is the MongoDB GUI, graphical user interface, we have used it in the past when we were writing MERN stack projects. Try to open the MongoDB Compass GUI and try connecting to this specific database that you have just started. This is the MongoDB Compass GUI. It looks something like this. This is where you specify where are you running MongoDB locally. Where am I running it? Am I running it on some cloud container? Did I go to cloud.mongodb.com to start it? Did I go to neon.tech to start it? No. I started it locally using Docker. How can I confirm कि चल रहा है कि नहीं? I am running it on localhost. Yes. What port am I running it on? We don't know yet. If I try to connect right now, वो नहीं चलेगा. MongoDB default port is 27017. तो ideally इसको चलना चाहिए था, but this is not working. Why? It is because of a advanced concept that's coming called port mapping. But अभी के लिए, just to make it run locally, add this, what's called a port mapping to your command. Docker run -p 27017 :27017 Mongo. थोड़ा सा चेंज कर दो इसको, just to see if it's working or not. Eventually we will understand what is happening over here. What is this port mapping thingy जिसने एकदम से इसको fix कर दिया. So what did I change? To start MongoDB locally, I am running Docker run -p 27017 :27017 and then the name of my image. Now let's see, does it work? If I open MongoDB Compass and connect, I am able to connect to a database. It's an empty database for now. I can add more tables, whatever in here. But MongoDB start to ho gaya. Did I have to go through their installation steps? No. Did I have to spend time installing MongoDB locally on my machine? No. I am using it And whenever I want to delete it, I can delete it from my machine also. I can run the command docker images. It will show me I have this Mongo image. I can remove this docker rm Mongo. Docker rmi Mongo. Docker rmi Mongo. I had to force it. There was some error over here. But running this command removed or deleted MongoDB from my machine. My machine is free of the 500 MB that I had to spend. So this is why Docker is useful. This is exactly what is covered in the actionable Docker class as well. Okay, locally start karna hai MongoDB. Run Docker run Mongo. Now I don't have Mongo locally again because I deleted it. So it will come to my machine and start. Whenever I want to stop it, or whenever I want to remove it from my machine, I can just run Docker RMI and the name of the image. So the command that I ran was docker rmi mongo -- force. So थोड़ा benefit दिख रहा है docker का. Very easy to run things locally. अभी तक we've only run databases. Eventually we will run open source projects in a single command. Beautiful. If I can run a single command, docker run cal.com, and it starts the cal.com code base locally for me, that's beautiful compared to going through their GitHub repository, cloning it, starting it, so on and so forth. So hopefully by now, some of you were able to run MongoDB locally by running the command docker run -p this and Mongo. Eventually, we will try to dive deeper into what is happening here or what is happening here and why did this fix it. Cool. Let's move on. What did this slide cover? What is inside Docker? What is inside Docker? Docker engine, CLI, and the final container that runs. Now comes the most, it's not important, but good topic to cover: images versus containers. Very common interview question: what is a Docker image? What is a Docker container? दोनों में क्या फर्क है? Maybe before we get there, if you want to run an open source project locally, then this is their GitHub page. github.com/calcom/cal.com. This is their GitHub page. And this is your Mac machine. What do? You clone their code. Git clone github.com/cal/cal.com. You bring their code base locally to your machine. You bring their code base locally to your machine. And then what do? You start the project locally. You run node index.js, something like this. Or you run npm run start. You execute their code base. There are two things you do. You clone their code base. Number two, you execute their code base. The difference in these two steps is very close to the difference in images versus containers. Image क्या होता है? A Docker image is a lightweight standalone executable package that includes everything needed to run a piece of software. This is an image. What does it say here? Explore official images Mongo image. The thing that I'm pulling from hub.docker.com is an image. When I ran docker run Mongo, unable to find image Mongo locally. So what is it pulling? It is pulling this image from here to my local machine. What is an image? It is everything needed to run that software. Image has its own, call it operating system, let's say Ubuntu, has its own file system. It has its own files. In case of MongoDB, maybe it has C++ installed. It has the MongoDB source code. It has the command to start MongoDB locally. Let's say this is the command. All of this packaged together is the Mongo image. How do you create this image? We are going to get to when we reach Dockerfile. But abhi people have created their images. We are running them locally. So this is a Mongo image. If I go to /_/Redis, This is the official Redis image. If I go to /_/Postgres, this is the official Postgres image. When I run Docker images locally, it tells me I have the Redis image locally that I pulled 4 weeks ago. It is worth 140 MB. I have the Mongo image locally that I pulled 2 months ago, 870 MB. This should have said 2 minutes ago. I don't know why it says 2 months ago. We'll debug eventually. Probably because I also installed it 2 months ago. It has it somewhere. Yeah, just curious to know why. Because we just pulled Mongo, right? If I run Docker pull or Docker run Kafka, so now it will start to pull Kafka. So it should have said 1 minute ago. Some reason it's saying 2 months ago. We'll see why. And Postgres. अभी मेरे मशीन में ये 3 images हैं. These are not containers. I am not running Mongo locally. Now I am running Mongo locally. Now I am not running Mongo locally. So what I am starting and stopping is the Mongo container. जब मैं ये run करता हूं, I start the Mongo container. When I exit this, I stop the Mongo container. But irrespective of Mongo container on है कि off है, I still have the Docker Mongo image in my machine. I have the Mongo image. It is similar to the cal.com code base in my machine. But when I run this image, when I run Docker run Mongo, is when I start a container. What have I started here? I have started a container. What is a container? An image in execution is called a container. अगर एक image है जिसको आप चला रहे हो, that is a container. If I run another command here, docker ps, it says I am running 2 containers. One is this Mongo container that I just started few seconds ago, 16 seconds ago. One is this Postgres container I might have started in the past. If I stop the thing on the left and now run docker ps, my Mongo container has stopped. I only have the Postgres container. If I want, I can stop the Postgres container as well. Now I have 0 containers running. That doesn't mean I don't have images. I have the Mongo image on my Mac. I have the Postgres image. I have the Redis image. I have not started them. When I start them, now I have started them, I have started a container. An image in execution is what is called a container. Now if I run docker ps, it tells me, okay, hey, there is this container ID where the image Mongo is running. This is the command that starts the image Mongo. It was created 9 seconds ago. It has been up till the last 9 seconds. Something port mapping, we'll come to what this is. Ye shayad the person who published this, I don't know what this is. Tell me later if someone knows. Probably the person who published it, but I could be wrong. Okay, so this is a container. As you can see, it says container ID. But when I write Docker images, these are the images. I can have 100 images on my machine, but might only start 2 containers right now. वो मुझ पे है. Image is like cloning a code base. Container is like running the code base. तो ये समझ आया? Going back to the slides. A Docker image is a lightweight standalone executable package, not just source code, a full package that includes everything needed to run a piece of software, Mongo, Postgres, Redis, including the code, a runtime, libraries, environment variables, config files. Docker container. A container is an running instance of an image. It encapsulates the application or services and its dependencies, running it in an isolated environment. तो ये Docker registry पे image होती है. When you run Docker run Mongo for the first time, image gets pulled over here. If I want, I can start 3 containers of Mongo. If I want, like, let's say you want to start Mongo 3 times for whatever reason. So you can actually go to your terminal, create 3 parts of it. And यहाँ पे भी run Docker run Mongo. यहाँ पे भी run Docker run Mongo. यहाँ पे भी run Docker run. Why is it not causing port conflict? ये तीनों same port पे नहीं चल रहे हैं हरकीरत. Our questions will come to very soon. But now I have 3 containers of Mongo running. They are all running the same image. मैंने तीनों start कर दिए. तो हरकीरत, which one will this connect to? We'll come to that when we reach port mapping. All of these are not running on my machine on a port. अभी तक I have not added a port mapping here. That is why they are not conflicting with each other. ऐसा नहीं है, if I start 2 Node.js process on the same port, second one does not start. It says port conflict, port already in use. Same will happen here very soon. Abhi ke liye, I have not started it on a port on my machine, which is why they are not conflicting. I was able to run 3 containers. I was able to run 3 containers from a single image, this Mongo image right here. So difference samajh aaya? What is an image? Full package, source code, runtime, file system, all deployed, let's say on Docker Hub. That is an image. You don't necessarily have to publish to Docker Hub. You might have a private image that you only keep with yourself or share it to your friend in a pen drive. But if you want to publish it to the world, you can publish public and private repositories on hub.docker.com. The one that we are using today are Mongo and Postgres, let's say, that these guys have created. So ये समझ आया? Docker image versus container, we understand. Let's do a poll. Image, complete package of your software. Container, when you run that software locally, you're running a container. Beautiful. 90% is great. Moving on. अब आ जाते हैं पोर्ट मैपिंग के. The thing that I introduced for it to run. One thing about Docker, which is a great thing, is कि यार ये जो Mongo container आपने चलाया, you are running a Mongo container, great. That Mongo container has something running on port 27017. MongoDB default port is 27017. अगर आप if you install MongoDB locally on your Mac without using Docker, then you run this command mongod. It starts MongoDB locally directly in your Mac, and by default it starts on port 27017. अब इस Mongo container में भी वही हो रहा है. The Mongo container, this mini machine, is also running it on port 27017. But इस machine के उस port पे चल रहा है वो. It is running on this port of this machine or this container. If I run it twice, then it will run इसके container पे यहाँ पे चलेगा, इसके container पे यहाँ पे चलेगा. I cannot access it. That is why when I was running, let me just delete all the images. Docker kill. Let me just stop them from here. Now I have no images running on my machine. I have no containers, running on my machine. When I run Docker run Mongo, MongoDB container starts. ये container start हो जाता है. It has something exposed on the container port, but not on my Mac का machine port. Mac के machine में if I go to localhost colon 27017, nothing is running. In fact, I can start another Node.js process here. I can start another Node.js process here on 27017 because this port hasn't yet been taken. Container के इस port पे कुछ चल रहा है, machine के इस port पे कुछ नहीं चल रहा. The Mac machine's 27017 port is unused. If I run the command docker run mongo, if I want to expose it, अगर मुझे चाहिए कि यार my machine का port should also be mapped to the container का port, you add a port mapping. यार container के 27017 पे something is running on Mongo container on port 27017. I want my Mac machine का port to port forward here. I want to add a port mapping कि Mac का ये port Mongo के इस port पे point करे. That is what this port mapping adds. Okay, my Mac machine's 27017 port should map to my containers 27017 port. Now when I run this, I have my Mac machine ka 27017 forwarding to my Mongo container ka 27017. Now if I go to localhost colon 27017, I see something. It looks like you are trying to access MongoDB. A while back, I shared that you might have a use case where you want to run 2 MongoDB databases together. So now what you can do is docker run. If I try to do the same thing, 27017 colon 27017, there will be a port conflict. On my Mac machine, this port is already taken. The second process cannot take the same port. But what I can do is, मुझे Mongo फिर से run करना है. I want to run Mongo again. So I can change this to a different port. Okay, now my Mac machine ka 27018 port is forwarding to the Mongo container, a new Mongo container on 27017. So now I have 2 MongoDB databases running locally. one of them running on 27017, one of them running on 27018. If I want, I can start 3, 4, 5, as many as I want. They all are independent Mongo containers. अगर मैं पहले वाले में जाता हूँ, this is me in the first one, and I add a new table here called, let's say, 27017 underscore table, and create this database. This database has been created in the localhost colon 27017 MongoDB container. This container right here. This container right here. इसमें कुछ नहीं हुआ है. This is a fresh independent Mongo container running. If I go and log out from here, how do I delete this? Or how do I log out from here? Oh, there you go. Let me click on plus here. Oh no, that isn't it. Let me just close and restart it. If I open MongoDB Compass again, and this time connect to 27018, then this second one doesn't have that database. यहाँ पे I can add a fresh database, users 2. So what did I do? This one I added a few databases. This one I added a few databases. This way I can independently put data. This way I can independently put data. They are two different containers. If I run docker ps, I see two containers are running, but the port mapping is different. First one में 27018 is pointing to container का 27017. Second वाले में 27017 of my Mac machine is pointing to 27017 of the container machine. This remains the same. ये तो वहीं चलेगा. Mongo image में जो लिखा है वही लिखा है. MongoDB image starts on 27017. So it doesn't matter how many of them you start. The container will have it running on the same port. Your Mac machine, you can decide. If I want, I can run it on port 3000 also. Now on port 3000 of my machine, MongoDB is running. So my Mac machine ka port I can control. The Docker containers port is defined in the Docker image. Whoever created the official MongoDB image, that person has, defined it 27017 पे start होगा. तो ये समझ आया? Do we understand port mappings? Do we understand why this is important? If you don't add this port mapping, you will not be able to access your Mongo container. Most things you start locally, you might have to access from your host machine. And if you want to do that, you have to add a port mapping. अगर आप नहीं add करोगे, if you have, let's say you are starting a container that trains a model, you don't have to talk to it. It will train the model on a bunch of images, it will post it to some database. So there might be use cases where you don't want to expose this on your host machine. But most of the times when you're running it, you do need to expose it on some port, and that's how you do it. Do you understand this? Tabhi, similarly, if I was running Postgres locally, what is the command? This is the command. Docker run. So let me remove this environment variable for now. Let me also remove -d for now. When you want to run Postgres locally, you run docker run -p 5432 5432 Postgres. My host machine का 5432 should point to Postgres का 5432. अब जिसने Postgres की image बनाई है, whoever has written the Postgres image, exposed it by default on 5432. Whoever created the Mongo image, exposed it by default on 27017. So the second thing depends on the image container. The first thing depends on you, okay, which port of your machine you want to expose it on. So let's do a poll. Do you understand port mappings? Can we move on? I think this should have been simple. Beautiful. Common Docker commands is the next section. Common Docker commands include Docker images, Docker PS, Docker build, and Docker run. चार ही common commands हैं. 3 we have already done. We have already done Docker PS, shows you all of your running containers. If you want to kill a container, Docker kill container ID. Docker kill container ID. So that's the first one. Second one is Docker images. What all images do you have locally? Whenever I start my class, a lot of times I delete these images because I don't have space in my Mac machine. So, One good hack is to go through all of your images and see if you have old ones that you're not using and remove them. Third one is Docker run. ये भी हमने देख ली. A way to start an image. The fourth command is Docker build. We'll come to इसके आगे क्या होता है. But what is Docker build used for? For building your own images. अभी तक we are using other people created images. Mongo image was created by someone else. Postgres image was created by someone else. If you want to create your own image, let's say you create your own database, you would want to compete with Postgres. If Postgres has an official client, you would also want one. So then you will have to build your own image. That is where this command comes into the picture, the Docker build command. How do you build it is very complicated. बहुत चीजें होंगी. You have to write a Docker file for it, a bunch of things. But that's what the fourth command lets you do. Docker build. Before we get into the fourth command, we'll have to understand a few things. What is a Docker file, so on and so forth. But what does it let you do? It lets you build your own image. We will see this later when we understand what are Docker files. There is also Docker push. If you want to push to your own hub.docker.com/your own DB name, then you run the command Docker push and the name of your image. Let's say Mongo. If I was the owner of the Mongo image, I would log into Docker login ऐसे करके. Then I would have just run Docker push Mongo. I would have pushed my image to the hub.docker.com. If I want to push it to a different registry, then also you can change this command a little bit. That's Docker push. Docker kill समझ आ गया? Docker PS. I have nothing running. Let me start something. Docker PS shows me the images. Docker kill container ID lets me kill the image. One more important command is there. Very important command called Docker exec. This lets you execute something inside a Docker container. I repeat, this is a Docker container. And let's say I want to execute a command inside it. That is where Docker exec comes into the picture. The most common command here is Docker exec in interactive mode, this container ID, and I want to run /bin/bash over here, or you can write sh over here. Docker execute. I want to execute a command. I want to execute it on this container ID. I want to run it interactively. And what is the command I'm running? Shell, to get shell access in here. Now I am inside the Docker container. I am inside this mini machine and I can do whatever I want. I can explore it. अच्छा ये container दिखता कैसे अंदर से? Oh, the container has its own set of files. I can go into a folder inside the container. cd/etc. Oh, the /etc folder has these things. But up type pwd, I see this, so on and so forth. Docker exec lets you execute any command. But if you run this specific command, the sh command, you're getting shell access to it. So you can run whatever command you want inside, which is great for exploring and debugging a Docker image. If you ever want to debug a Docker image, what is the command that you run? Docker exec interactively container ID /bin/bash or sh, either one of them is fine. And then you are inside the Docker machine, do whatever you want, look at the files, folders, so on and so forth. Okay, cool. These are the common commands to recap. See all the images on your machine, see all the containers on your machine, start a image, that means start a container, build an image, we have to come to, push to the Docker registry your own image, a bunch of extra commands, Docker exec being the important one that lets you go inside a container and run commands inside a container. Now, let's understand the Docker file. ये थोड़ा heavy है, मतलब this slide is heavy, so let's breathe for a bit. Let's take a 2-minute break. And then we'll get into the Docker file. This is important if you want to create your own image, which you would eventually. आप खुद की भी images बनाओगे. You will not. MongoDB is, of course, official person created that MongoDB image. But as you create your own project, your Accelerator clone, your Second Brain clone, or whatever project you're building, it's a good idea to containerize it. Why? Number one, it makes deployment very easy, especially if you're using container orchestration. अगर आपको अपने Accelerator clone में container orchestration use करनी है, if you want to use container orchestration in your Accelerator clone, then you will have to containerize your accelerator clone. So you have to understand how to containerize your own Node.js applications also. Containers are not meant only for databases or Redis or things like these. Your own source code you should also containerize so that anyone in the world can run Docker, run Harkirat image, whatever, with a port mapping, and they get my project running locally. If you have gone through my Neat hack video where I hacked Neat, I wanted to, whatever, hit their servers a lot. So I created an image, Docker run 100x devs / neat scraper, something like this. And I asked everyone कि आप अपनी site पे इसको चलाओ. The more people that would have run this, the more easily we would have been able to scrape data from Neat. So that is another common use case where you might want to do this. The question is, how did I containerize my application? How do you containerize a Node.js application or any application for that matter? This is exactly the question that was asked in that 120K ka jiska laga hai interview. His interview was, they gave him a VM. His VM had 6 folders. His VM had 6 folders like this. All of them had very simple JavaScript code, Rust code, Go code, Python code. And he had to write the Docker file for all of them. He had to do one more thing. The node code had some bug in it. So, when he opened the node file, it looked something like this. Const express equal to require express, let's say. And, whatever, express.get / something like this. So what is wrong here? What he had to debug was, acha, express code looks like this, const app equal to express. And then, he had to replace this with app. That was the first part of his assignment. The second part was to containerize this JavaScript app. And then once he did that, he had to do it for other languages. What was expected was 2 languages. He did all 6, I think. But that was the interview that he had in that DevOps company. So as long as you understood how to write your own Docker files, and if you had enough wit to be able to understand, not just understand the source code, you could Google, you could see ke kya galat hai. You couldn't chat GPT, but aap thoda pad ke, you could have solved for all 6 languages, created the Docker file for all 6 languages, good to go, interview cleared. So that is what we're learning next. How do you containerize a Node.js process? So let's first create a Node.js project. Let me quickly create a Node.js project locally. I would urge you to do the same. Open it in Visual Studio Code. npm init-y to initialize an empty package.json. Maybe that's it. Let's not worry about TypeScript. Simple enough. A simple index.js file. Npm install express. Const express equal to require express. Const app equal to express. App.get / rest.json, whatever, send hello world, app.listen, 3000. Simple enough. How do I start this locally? Node index.js. If I go to localhost :3000, index.js is working correctly. So that is how you write a very simple Express application. Take 1 minute to do it. Then you can, of course, create a TypeScript application. You can create a monorepo. Small things change when you're creating the Docker file as you move from a JavaScript project to a TypeScript project, or a TypeScript project to a monorepo project. Some things will change, but the crux of it, the most difficult bit, we'll cover right now. And very simple to then do a TypeScript or monorepo. I can do it in a video as well. All right, another 60 seconds I'm going to give. Initialize an empty Node.js project on your side. Doesn't matter what it is. If it has an HTTP server, that would be nice. Okay, you have a long running process that's listening on a specific port. Why is that good? So that we can test port mappings and everything. So एक simple सा project बना लो locally. take the another 45 seconds. I'll look at Q&A until then. Then we'll understand how to containerize this project. You can use Prisma with Mongo. Yeah, like someone answered. Is Docker engineer Docker daemon the same thing? No, daemon is something else. What is the Docker daemon? Daemon starts the engine, I think. Daemon का usually मतलब क्या होता है? Something that is running in the background and doing a bunch of things. The Docker daemon will is different from the Docker engine. Apple Silicon depends on what chip you have. Allow it in the security. What is that? I don't know. Docker desktop is stuck. Happens. You will have to debug. Happens to my machine also from time to time. Google, they'll tell you something. Go to settings, change something. It'll work. I mean, is there a way to run? Yeah, you can just get a VM and run it over there. What about N files using Docker? Great question. There are a few ways to inject environment variables inside Docker containers. We'll look at a few of them. Can you tell us when we start distribute Prometheus? In a while. I mean, first we'll do Prometheus and you have to submit project for internship. I can put the cohort 2 videos if you want for Prometheus just for you. Or we'll give you cohort 2 access. Basically, just mail at headexpress.com. I'll give you cohort 2 access. तो उसमें जाके आप देख लेना. यहाँ पे तो it'll be a month or so before we reach there. Just got intern for front end. How to monitor space for 1 minute. Hold on. What is that question? Last question, then I'll continue. But how Docker Mongo containers are exposed on the same port does not conflict on the Docker engine side. Host, I understand conflicts like how multiple. Okay, so it isn't. Okay, great question. This is a small machine that you started, which has its own ports, port 0 to port whatever 65553. उसमें से एक port you took of that container. This is a separate container which has its own set of ports. उसमें से one port you took. It is not like a Docker has a single port area where you can, only one container can take one port. This is a container, it has its own ports. One of them it took. This is a container, has its own ports. One of them it took. They are not sharing a port range कि अगर इसने ले लिया तो ये नहीं ले पाएगा. Hopefully that answers it. All right. How do you containerize this application? Very common thing. And it is done by using something called the Docker file. What you have to do is create a Docker file for now in the root of your project. Eventually you can find a different place for it. This is where you describe how your project should be built. आपके project की क्या-क्या dependencies हैं. Our project has a Node.js dependency. Our project has an Express dependency. Our project may use an environment variable. Our project exposes port 3000. Our project needs to run index.js file. ये सब आप यहाँ लिख देते हो. This is like a configuration file describing everything you need to start this project locally. So how can I write this? Can I write a bunch of commands? Somehow install node and then, run npm install and then, express, let's say, or just npm install and then, run node index.js. ऐसा कुछ करना होगा. I need to write a bunch of lines that will create my image that I can push to Docker Hub eventually. Someone else can pull and run on their machine. I have to give it a step by step of how to run this project locally. MongoDB वाले ने क्या किया होगा? Whoever created the MongoDB image must have, installed C++, let's say, and then, cloned MongoDB code, and then, install another, I don't know what MongoDB uses, but let's say Rust, and then, run MongoDB, something like this. They would have also written a bunch of these steps like this. Let's look at an open source repo. P5JS web editor. If you look at their source code, at the top, they have a Docker file. And it seems pretty readable. कि हाँ, अच्छा, from node something as base. कुछ तो लिखा है यहाँ पे भी. From node पता नहीं क्या है as base. Run some command to create a directory, mkdir something, workdir something, expose a specific port, copy a bunch of files, run npm start, So seems like ऐसे कुछ किया. It's little complicated to read. It will be much easier for our project. But it seems like you have to write a bunch of steps. कि image में क्या होना चाहिए? What should run inside the image? So what is the Docker file? If you want to create an image for your own code, be it a Node.js code, Python code, Rust code, Golang code, that you can push to Docker Hub, other people can pull on their machine. You need to create a Docker file for your application. You need to tell Docker कि image बनेगी कैसे, how the image is built. A Docker file is a text document that contains all the commands a user could call on the command line to create an image. All the commands a user could call on the command line to create an image. Slightly complicated statement, but basically all the commands that are needed to run your project locally. क्या होगी वो इसके लिए? It will be install Node.js. It will be clone the repo, or copy the index.js file and the package.json file. Then it will be run node index run npm install, and then it will finally be run node index.js. These will be the steps that need to be followed. How do you write this in the Docker file syntax is what we have to understand next. Docker file has two parts. Actually has three, but chalo, two for now. A base image. Do you want a starting base image? Let's say I'm creating something on top of MongoDB that needs to use MongoDB. So I can actually start from a base image of Mongo. The same image that I was pulling locally. When I ran Docker run Mongo, I got the Docker image locally, right? Sorry, the Mongo image locally, right? I can start from that image, जिसमें MongoDB already hai, and add more things on top. You don't start from a Mongo image. You start from different base images, like an Ubuntu base image. On a fresh Ubuntu machine, I want to first install Node.js and then run the rest of the things. So this first line of code of your Docker file will always be कि base image क्या है? What is a starting image for you? It can be scratch. If you want to start from scratch, that is fine. But usually you start from an Ubuntu, or you start from an existing image that already has Node.js. This from node:22 is an image on Docker Hub, hub.doc, Docker Hub Node.js image. This node image is a base image, or it is an image just like ours, जैसे हम बनाएंगे अभी, but it has Node.js already installed. तो या तो मैं scratch से start कर सकता हूँ, and then I can install Node.js, or I can just start from a base Node.js image. क्या start from an image that has the Node.js version 22 installed, and इसके बाद I can run npm install and so on and so forth. So the first base image of yours, you can decide if you want Ubuntu, that is fine. If you want Scratch, that is fine. But अगर आपको पता ही है कि you have a Node.js project, then why not use a base Node.js image? Harkirat, what if I have a Node.js and Golang project? Yes, then you will have to use one of them. Use a Node base image or Go base image, and then explicitly install Go after that. Or you'll have to find an image that has both of them installed. But अगर Node.js project ही है, तो rather than starting from Ubuntu and then writing the commands to install Node.js, just start from Node.js. That way, you start from an image that already has Node.js installed, और इसके बाद आपको अपने steps डालने हैं. वो steps क्या होते हैं, उस पे आते हैं next. अभी के लिए Docker file has two parts: the base image that you're starting from and a bunch of commands that you're running on top of the base image. कि ये base image तो आ गई. This has Node.js installed, has the Node.js binary, has npm. इसके ऊपर I want to, number one, do what? I want to copy this file in here, right? I want to let's look at the Docker file and understand a bunch of these other commands that you get. From हमें समझ आ गया कि what base image do I want to start from? You can start from node 22, which has the node version 22 installed. Or common images are node 22 Alpine. Alpine is a slightly more lightweight version. So it won't be very big. It won't be 3 GB. It will be like 200 MB. So you can get Alpine versions of even Go and Node. Alpine is usually the better one. It's just more lightweight, that's it. Size chota hoga. Then comes our second command that we're learning. Workdir. This is कि आपकी working directory क्या है? Charging हो रही है, खत्म. दुविधा. All the ये तो इसमें लगा है, ये कैमरा में लगा है, तो ये होगा ना, ये कैमरा में लगा है, तो ये किसमें लगा है? Okay, found it. 1 second. All right. Sorry about that. What I was saying was वर्क डायरेक्टरी represents कि आपकी वर्किंग डायरेक्टरी क्या है, मतलब कहां पे आपको डॉकर इमेज में फाइनली कोड लिखना है. वेयर डू यू वांट टू स्टोर ऑल द कोड फाइनली? वर्क dir common one is either user bin app or slash app or slash node.js app. Really depends on you. Where do you want to store your final code? What is your working directory? Working directory मतलब सोर्स कोड कौन सी वर्किंग डायरेक्टरी में कॉपी होगा? वेयर आर यू कॉपिंग ऑल द सोर्स कोड? वेयर आर यू डूइंग अदर थिंग्स इनसाइड? वेयर आर यू रनिंग द कोड, सोर्स कोड फ्रॉम? दैट इज व्हाट द वर्क dir कमांड लेट्स यू डू. देन कम्स द कॉपी कमांड. कि यार आई वांट टू कॉपी एवरीथिंग. डॉट क्या होता है? एवरीथिंग इन दिस फोल्डर ओवर टू एवरीथिंग इन द डॉकर कंटेनर. हम क्या कर रहे हैं? वी आर राइटिंग स्टेप्स के फाइनल इमेज कैसी दिखेगी. हाउ विल आवर फाइनल इमेज लुक लाइक? What are we doing? We have some source code over here, index.js, package.json. We have some source code, a bunch of files. We have a base image, a node:20-alpine base image. We are saying कि एक slash app repository होगी where we'll be copying things. And then we are saying copy dot dot. या फिर let's say I write copy index.js over to /index.js. So what will this do? It will take the index.js file and put it in the /app folder, put it in the working directory. I can write another command ./package.json to inside this folder in package.json. What will that do? Copy the package.json, paste it over here. Or what I can do is copy dot dot. What does that mean? Copy everything from this folder into the Docker container. Copy all the files from here and bring them inside this app folder, /app folder here, the working directory here. That is what copy lets you do. There is a very big problem here कि node modules भी copy हो जाएंगे. I repeat, ideally you should only copy source code and इसके बाद you should run npm install to actually install the dependencies. Your Docker container should fresh install dependencies. You should not copy node modules like this. So this command has a small flaw, which is when you write copy dot dot, you will end up copying amongst everything. You will also copy over the node modules. And node modules should not be copied from the host machine into the image. They should be rebuilt. So what can you do here? You can include a .docker ignore file. Just like the git ignore file ignores things to commit to GitHub or commit locally, the Docker ignore file will ignore the node modules folder when it is copying the rest of the files. So it will copy everything from here minus node modules. वो copy नहीं होंगी, which is exactly what we want. Why? Because we want to fresh install in the node modules here. We want node modules यहाँ बाद में आए by running npm install. We don't want them to be copied from the host machine over here. You might be building this for a different environment. You might be on a Windows machine where node modules are built a different way. So that will cause problems. So you should fresh install all the dependencies here. npm install should be a separate command here. You should not copy node modules from your host machine. या तो उसको delete ही कर दो. Either delete it or add it to your .docker ignore, which is a cleaner solution. Great. So here I introduced another command, run. What does run do? Run runs a specific command. npm install run करना है. If this was a TypeScript project, then we had to run npm run build as well. If this was a Prisma project, then I had to run npx Prisma migrate, npx Prisma generate also. Ours is a simple JavaScript project, so I just have to run a single command, npm install. What is the next one? Expose. What does this tell? Here we want to expose this port using the process. इस process में कौन सा port exposed है? 3000. That is what expose lets you do. इसके बिना भी काम चल जाता है वैसे. You don't need this. But in your Docker file, why do you write it? To tell everyone कि हाँ, I am exposing port 3000. This process exposes something on port 3000. And then comes the last one, CMD. CMD is very slightly different from run. Run runs a bunch of commands in your Docker image while your Docker image is being created. जो MongoDB का founder था, he wrote a bunch of these things to create the Mongo image. And the command is what runs when you run the Docker image. One thing is you create the image, other thing is you run the image. You start the container. CMD represents कि जब container start होगा तो क्या run करूं? When the container starts, what do we want to run? Node index.js. So CMD, you can only have one CMD in your Docker file. And this CMD represents the process that you are starting, or the process that needs to start जब container run होगा. When the user will eventually run Docker run Harkirath project, with a port mapping. So when he presses enter, only this will run. Harkirath project image already has all of this. So Harkirath project image that is going to get pushed to Docker Hub. When you run Docker build, तब यहाँ से यहाँ तक everything runs. This thing runs when Harkirath will run, Docker run locally. Whenever you run the image, this thing runs. Whenever you are building the image, then all of these run commands run. So that's the difference between RUM and CMD. You can only have one CMD, you can have multiple runs. This runs when the image starts. This runs when you build the image. So if I try to, that's enough, by the way, that is done. That's all that we needed. To recap, the base image is represented from, the working directory is represented from workdir. Copy is used to copy files from your original source code into the Docker container. Run is used to run a bunch of commands. We have a JavaScript project, so we only need to run npm install. We don't need to run npm run build. If this was a TypeScript project, then we would have had to run npm run build as well. Expose 3000, what ports you want to expose, and the final command to actually run the project locally, which in our case is node index.js. That is enough. Now I can build this image. कौन सी command बची थी हमारी? What command did we not learn about अभी तक? Docker build. To build an image, to create an image that you can push to Docker Hub. What is the syntax? Docker build -t, the name of your image. You can call it whatever you want. If you want, you can call it Mongo also. Locally, to jo marzi bulao. I am going to call it, let's say for now, I call it, hello -world -app. Docker build, the tag of your image. Where is the Docker file? What are you trying to build? Is this, or the root folder of your build is the last thing, which is the current folder for me. Docker build, a name for your image. This is not the name. Eventually we'll understand this is the tag. What is a tag we'll come to. But abhi ke liye name maan lo ise. Docker build, name of the image, and then dot. Where do I need to compile the source code? Where do I find the Docker file? Where is the source code present? So on and so forth. This is the only command that you had to run. As you can see, a bunch of logs that spit out. Loading Docker ignore. From Docker IO /library/node22 Alpine, it pulled the node22 Alpine image, which was my base image. It brought that from Docker Hub. Uske baad ran the workdir command, ran the copy command, ran npm install, exported the image, exporting the image, so on and so forth. Khatam. Now, if I look at Docker images, I have a hello world app image. Only I have it. You don't have it. I haven't yet pushed it. ये मेरी application है, private है. Only I have it on my machine. If I want now, rather than running node index.js, I can run it using Docker. Docker run port mapping 3000 of my host machine should point to 3000 of the container. Hello world app. नहीं नाम था इसका. What was the name of our image? Docker images. Hello world app. Now that looks right. It is running already. For some reason, I don't see any logs here, but the container has started. If I go to localhost colon 3000, I see hello world. So my hello world application is running via Docker. Let me show it again. Let me kill the application. Let me kill Mongo. I have no containers running, 0 containers. Let me run Docker run port mapping hello world app. It has started locally. If I refresh, I see localhost colon 3000. If I stop it, which sometimes it gets a little hard, so Docker PS. If I kill it, then I don't have it running locally. What would be super interesting is what if I deploy this to Docker Hub and everyone on this call can run it on their machines. They only need to have Docker installed. They don't need to have Node.js installed, even though this is a Node.js project. This is a Node.js project. But my Hello World image already has Node.js ka ek patla version, Alpine version installed. So as long as you run this image locally, you will have Node.js in that container that will be able to run my source code. So what is left is me pushing this so you guys can run this on your machine maybe. And you can share it with your friend, whatever. So here you have to create steps are very simple or similar to how you would do it on GitHub. Create an account on GitHub, push it, your friend will pull it. We'll do it very soon. But before that, ye cheez samajh aayi. To recap, I ran this command docker build. Since dot is the directory, it found Docker file in the same directory. It understood these are the steps it has to follow. When I ran this, it built my image, got the base image, got the working directory, copied over the files, ran npm install, exposed the port. That's it. That is all that happens when I run docker build. And when I run docker run, then this last command runs inside this container that actually starts the process. Can we do a quick poll? Do we understand this? Simple enough. Cool. Of course, this gets more complicated as you have a more bigger application. Put environment variables in here. Multiple ports are exposed. Multiple processes are running. A lot of things can happen. Very simple Node.js project. Yeah. What is step 2? TypeScript project. What is step 3? Monorepo. Gets progressively harder. Docker files become bigger. There's something called multi-stage builds, which we'll get into. So a lot of things, that you have to do. But a very simple Docker file, we understand. Great. So ab kya bacha? Pushing into Docker Hub. Let's see what the slides say iske baad. Docker file. Building images, we have done it. Running images, we have done it. Passing environment variables. So let me show you one more, flag over here that you can use. If you want to pass environment variables to a Docker container, you can pass it with -e. You don't need it. When you deploy Docker applications, you usually deploy it using, some container runtime or some orchestration engine, like Kubernetes. And there's a different way to push in environment variables, but just for kicks, since this is a flag that's there, let's try to log console.log env variable, console.log process.env dot, let's say database URL. Let me log this environment variable. Let me build my Docker image again. It's built. Let me run the Docker image again. But this time I will pass it an environment variable, specifically database underscore URL equal to, let's say something random, Harkirat Singh 123 at localhost, something like this. Enter. So now, as you can see, Harkirat Singh 123 at localhost got logged, which means the process.env variable, which has the environment variables, I was able to inject the database URL, a secret. Of course, you should never have database URLs hard-coded in your code base like this. Then everyone will be able to read it on GitHub. GitHub, you will also push your Docker file. So even though you can pass environment variables over here, you could have also done this. env database URL equal to whatever is your database URL. So even though you can do this, maybe don't do this unless this is a local file that you're writing. This isn't a secret database, but it's just a local database, MongoDB // localhost :27017. That is fine, but don't put a secret in here. Ideally, you will not put environment variables here. When you are running it, when you are finally on your, virtual machine where you're running the Docker image to deploy it, there you will pass the environment variable like I did. So, that is why you need to understand the -e flag here. It lets you pass in a environment variable. When would you do this? When you're finally deploying it on a virtual machine and your process requires a secret, a database URL. तो उस machine में जाके you can pass in this flag to inject the database URL in there. Cool. Great. Environment variables are done. More commands. I already took you through this one. Docker exec, name of the container. And you can do a bunch of things like we ran this Docker exec interactively, name of the container /bin/bash. But you can do anything. Like you can also do Docker exec, name of the container, ls, to see the contents of a specific directory, mkdir to create a directory, so on and so forth. Docker exec lets you execute a command. If the command that you're executing is /bin/bash and you're running it in interactive mode, is when you can actually get into the container and do whatever you want. Let's try that for our container. Let me run. Are we running a container right now? Docker ps. We are not. Let me run the hello world container. Docker run. Hello world. Chal gaya. Docker ps. I see my container ID. Docker exec interactive mode container ID /bin/bash. Since we're using the Alpine image, you don't have access to bash there. So, just write sh, don't write /bin/bash. Now, notice which folder am I on by default? My working directory /app. And notice it has everything in there. It doesn't need the Docker file. So I can add this to Docker ignore as well. It has node modules that were created from here, not my local node modules. It has package.json, package.json, index.js. So this copy command did it work as expected? Yes, it did. I can see inside my Docker container, I have all the files. So this is how you can explore and debug your code. And if you ever feel your Docker image is not doing what it's supposed to, go inside the image and try to debug it. Cool. Exec command we had already done. Last thing is for today, pushing to Docker Hub. Tomorrow are some advanced concepts, layers, optimizing Docker files, networks and volumes, Docker Compose. ये कल करेंगे. Today, last thing that is left is how do you publish it to Docker Hub? So, would urge you to do it on your side also. I'll do it on my side also. Go to dockerhub.com or hub.docker.com. Sign up over here or sign in over here. Once you sign in, it's like GitHub. You have a bunch of your repositories. For example, I have like so many repositories in here. So what you can do is एक मिनट का ब्रेक लेगा इस जल्दी से. I see, that's for kicks. Today I learned if you are creating your Docker repositories directly from a CI/CD pipeline, then by default it will make all of your repositories public and not private. Which is very weird. They should not do that. They should have them be private by default. Okay, बताया तो क्या हो रहा था? I fixed it, I think. Zoom, reshare. All right. So these are some of the repositories for, let's say webinar. It was public, which was bad. Project, and there's one more here that I'll quickly make private. Settings. There are a lot of downsides to a public repository. I mean, really doesn't matter for these. This is the dev cluster anyway. It doesn't matter basically. कुछ होता नहीं इससे. But you would have been able to run a few services that if you wanted, because these are public repositories. Now they're not. Cool. So what I was saying was, okay, you can actually create them by default through a CI/CD pipeline, or generally. And by default, अगर आप बनाते हो, वो public बनाता है. Basically, मैं दिखा देता हूँ क्या हो रहा था. What was happening was, what did I do right now? This is by the way, I've logged into hub.docker.com. Great. While I'm on hub.docker.com, I want to push a new repository here, 100xdev/class. So if I click on create a repository and create a fresh repository called class and make it private and create it, everything is beautiful. कोई कमी नहीं है, private repository है. But what Docker Hub lets you do is, you don't have to explicitly create it also. What is my username on Docker Hub? It is 100xdevs. तो मेरी जो Docker file है ना, let me rebuild it with a different name. 100xdevs/class25 or 26 DevOps. I've just given it a different name. Everything else is still the same. It got built. And I can simply push this. Docker push 100xdev/class26 DevOps. This will push it to Docker Hub. Of course, I have already logged into Docker Hub here. So aapke liye, if you are doing it, you will have to do a Docker login to actually log into Docker Hub here. I already have done that. When I do a Docker push 100xdev/class26 DevOps, it will automatically create a repository which will be public. So that is what happened. Okay. These images were pushed via CI/CD pipeline that was building them, but I did not explicitly create a private repository here. So all of them were public when they shouldn't have been. Same is true for the one that I just published. So now 100xdevs/class16 DevOps is a publicly available image. And if I run this locally, docker run -p 3000:3000 100xdev/class16 DevOps. Let me delete the old one. If I run this, it runs for me locally, localhost:3000. It is working. But now the cool thing is, anyone can run this. You on your side can also run docker run port mapping 100xdev/class26 DevOps. And on your side also, even if you don't have Node.js, the code that I had written will start to run because I've published this to Docker Hub on a public repository. On class26 DevOps, this is a public repository. Anyone can access it. You can't pull the private repositories, but you can pull the public repositories by running, whatever, Docker run port mapping and this. So this is me deploying my application. You can pull it and it'll run on your side also. So if you run this command, the same will happen on your side. That's it. Cool. I'm just thinking, because I've missed something like this, like how many other things I've missed because I'm now delegating a lot of these tasks to developers. This was a very obvious thing that was missed. Not good. But okay, chalo, I think we're safe for now. Cool. So Docker, cool, good to go. कोई सवाल इस पे? Pushing to Docker Hub to recap. To build an image, Docker build the name of the image dot. You should name it. You need to name it prefix with your Docker Hub username, which in my case is 100xdevs. I can only push to 100xdevs/something. I can only push to github.com/hkirath/something. I can't push to someone else's GitHub repository. And similarly here, whatever is your Docker Hub username / give your repository a name and publish it, and you're good to go. All right, let's do a poll. Do we understand pushing to Docker Hub? If you don't, slides take you through it. Very simple. Sign up to Docker Hub. Create a new repository. Very important. Make sure you select private or public. The right one. And then do a Docker login. Give it your credentials and push your repository. Docker push your username / repository name. एक चीज नहीं करी हमने tags. Let's do them tomorrow. What exactly are these tags and why do you use them? So on and so forth. All right. 9:45. Good stopping point. Let's do a poll. Do we understand things? Everything is a little advanced, so I'm not starting it. Beautiful, simple enough. All right, let's do chat. And if you understood everything, great time to drop off. Let me for a while stop screen sharing and do something I should have done a while back. All right, good to go. What I was doing was I'm just resetting a bunch of database credentials because they were somehow. Never mind. We'll talk a different day about what happened here, but everything is fixed now, hopefully. Chat is open. Any questions, guys? Let's talk to. Zoom chat. Oh, it is. Where is it? Where is chat? Shoot, it's open for a really long time. No, okay. All right. I'm getting something like openstatus.com, status page. That's beautiful for us. What should I use? A EC2 or a Lambda? That's a great question. That's a beautiful question. I'm just so the only reason not to use Lambda for this, like Lambda is a great offering here, right? You'll scale very well, and you might need to scale, and also you might need to, if you're creating something like this, you have to create this from multiple regions because people want to see, is it down or up in India? Is it down or up in the US? So like Lambda sounds like the better option because I don't think you have to hit too much, right? Once every 3 minutes you have to hit. That's no cost at all. A single person that you're charging $10 a month will probably put 5 websites. So, it's not very expensive. So I would use Lambda. It doesn't matter either way, but a Lambda, you can start a cron, right? Very easily on a Lambda to run it every 3 minutes and you're good to go. Where is Docker build file we generate? There is no build file that generates when you run Docker build. An image is generated. A file isn't generated. The file is the Docker file, which is, where you have a lot of your configuration. Notion doc. I need some quick money for some reason. Quickest is a grant from Super Team, if that's what you're looking for. Found something. Nothing that you might have found is hopefully problematic right now, but I could be wrong. Unable to find headaches that slash class 26. Oh, wait. This is what you have to get. 100x devs slash class 26 DevOps. It should be able to find it. Like give it now, try it, should work. A container is like a VM on a machine using resources. It is not like a VM. A VM is a container is a little more lightweight. But yes, it is similar. Like a VM would have a GUI. I'm just giving one example. Or may not have a GUI versus a container does not. And generally also, if you start a VM, you'll see it'll take some 10 minutes to start or 5 minutes to start or 3 minutes to start, and containers start like this. So no, it is not like a VM, it's different. But theoretically, you can think of it like one. If container has Ubuntu, won't it conflict with my Windows machine? Have you ever tried starting, a Windows machine on your Mac? You can do that, right? By creating a virtual machine, a VM. And similarly, when you're starting containers, it has its own, operating system, in this case, Ubuntu, or it doesn't have it will not conflict with your Mac machine. Even other than Docker and containers, you can always start virtual machines on top of your Mac machine or a Windows machine where you're running Linux. It is called a virtual machine for a reason. It can run on top of your existing OS. I mean, if you GSOC, you look like just start talking to the maintenance. The only other thing I would say. If you understood everything today, maybe go through the rest of the slides for tomorrow, because it will be, and it'll just help. Tomorrow will be a little hard compared to today. Yes, next auth, a bunch of Next.js things, a bunch of them are pending. We have the list. I just need time to be able to get to them. So, when we restart full stack, we can cover it then as well. Either is fine. I'll probably cover it in an offline video. I'll make one very long, long offline video with a bunch of pending topics which will have it. What happens in a full stack project? My backend goes down for whatever reason. My front end will still work as my front end and backend are on this is working on the same port. In a full stack project, unless you're writing Next.js or unless you're somehow exposing your front end through your Node.js application, they run on different ports. And if backend goes down, backend goes down. Paytm may you see the Paytm application, but a lot of times you're not able to hit their backend because backend is down. So if the backend is down, the front end will fade, just behave weirdly and that's it. Notion doc, Super 30, Super 30, Notion doc. Oh, this is open for a long time. So let me just open a lot of repeated questions. So let me just open all the Notion docs that I see, and then we'll go from there. Especially I got a job, 30K now. Starboard, thank you so much. I wanted to ask one thing. I've been working for a few years, but while I'm talking to them, I feel like they're salary we keep your fire on, but great that you found it yourself, and it's a good starting point, and keep going from here. Congrats. Um, cool. Notion doc, Notion doc. Cool. Let's see. Question. No updates yet. We've applied, but we'll see. Looks good. Pretty decent. Oh, sorry. Join room. All right. Cool. Got it. Yeah, this is great. A few things you can add. Like this is a little far from Accelerator. If you click here, click here, click here, it creates a rounded line. Circle is created a different way in there, like the way, and also it's a circle. This can be an oval as well. But the question is it collaborative? And the answer is, it seems like it is. Yeah, looks good. Very cool. Like don't hit it. Pretty good. Nothing else that you could have done extra. What else can you do extra? If you want a challenge, connect this to an AI and give the AI instructions. Okay, I want to create a house and see can the AI create a house for you. What are the challenges that will come when you're doing something like this? You'll have to tell the AI somehow. Okay, how can it use your website? So can you try that? That would be a great thing to build. Oh, same thing, different guy. Drawing room. Yeah, looks very similar. Oh, you have this also. That is very impressive. Honestly, ये मैंने नहीं expect किया था. ये भी है. Now I'm just curious to read how you've done this. But very cool. This is great. I don't think anyone else did this zoom in and zoom out functionality. So let's quickly see what you've done. Web components, canvas. I'm assuming it is using some code from somewhere. So canvas dot set tool, where is that coming from? App slash draw slash canvas draw slash canvas. Alrighty. Let's see. Zoom. You have a zoom variable here. Perfect. This dot scale into delta, and then how are you using this dots? Okay, this dot on scale change is a function on scale change, which does what? Are you overriding this somewhere? On scale change. Oh God. Okay, I'll spend like 30 more seconds. And if I'm not able to figure out, I'll move on. But this is very good. Very impressive. Probably be in components on scale. There you go. Handle scale change. Abhay, this is set it as the state variable. Why is that? Okay. Okay, that's for the action bar. Okay, got it. Slightly makes sense. I get it. I get what you're doing. So that the action bar can also be zoomed in and zoomed out. You're doing that. The question is rendering कैसे change हो रही है? Okay, set transform. Oh, seems like Canvas just provides you something that lets you do it. Oh, I thought you would have to write a lot of physics, but yeah, pretty good. Cool. Very good. I like it. Front-end, after 3.7 years of experience, like this isn't too out of the hope of, 4 years, because 4 years of experience, low, you have an easier interview compared to a fresher. And, expectation that's 30K US, which is few people are getting it. But the question is, you have to figure out how to reach that company, or whatever, call it a referral. But I think your skills are at par. You are amongst the few people who did this, especially the zoom in, zoom out functionality. So I would say it's less about your skills now and more about you getting connected to the company and, being able to find it. But yes, this is great. Good project. I'm trying to. Okay, portfolio I'm going to ignore. No questions related to class. I think I saw it. Yeah, I think this was you, right? KTS dot something that is yes. Good. I have forwarded your profile. Did you send me a resume? I don't know what I sent. I think I sent him this. But remind me again and maybe send me the resume in the same chat. So I'll forward your resume. Three. So there are two opportunities based on if you're in college or not. But if you're in college, then the intern position is what you'll sort of get referred for. Cool. Found this hacking NASA tweet. Only, but court case instead. Again, and just reporting. Found this hacking NASA tweet. Reminded me of you hacking in EdTech. Japanese Wali. Oh, yeah. Okay, got it. But you've got a. I didn't get a code case. I just got threatened by the founder, but he chilled out eventually. Topic, however, setting up in today's class. All right, this looks very fancy. Like, which is, debatable if people like it or not. I don't love fancy website. I think simple is better for me, but yeah, shows some skills. All right, third one, guys. ये देख लिया मैंने already. ये देख लिया मैंने. Done. But okay, what was the tweet again? And also, like, there are things you should do. If you find a vulnerability, you should report them, and then you sign a few things, and you can't really publicly post about them unless they allow. But if you want a bounty, it's better to just report it and not create a YouTube video out of it. That's a long one. Other trading old items. Okay, that's very good. React can be optimized, but or just your landing page at the very least, move that to HTML, CSS, JS, or Next.js. You will know when you will see a bill from them and you'll understand I need to migrate, then migrate. So high traffic is not a problem. It's very easy. Get a big VM for now, scale vertically. If it's a lot, पता नहीं कितना, वैसे तो I would assume this won't hit too much scale. So a single VM will handle whatever you need. And if you hit a scale, then just talk to me again. But basically, the simplest thing you can do is create an auto scaling group in AWS, let's say. Or if you want more complicated things, then there are 10 different things you can try. You can create an auto scaling Kubernetes cluster. You can use serverless like someone else suggested to just offload it to, offload all the scaling, especially during bursts, to something like AWS. A bunch of things you can do. Cool. That looks good. Let me look at the website. This is not bad. This is not great also. UI wise, let's look at the code. Yeah, this I mean, okay. Oh, JSX. I would, at the very least, move this to aliases, move this to TSX. But other than that, yeah, looks pretty good. Close, close, close. Done, done, done. What are ANV Vault website providing services for storing ENV variables? I'm assuming you mean this or something similar. And correct me if I'm wrong. But Doppler is one of many websites that let you store environment variables per environment, like dev environment, product environment separately. What is your question here? What are these websites? So if this is what you're asking, then what happens in a very big company is new developers join, they want to start the application locally. They don't have access to the dev environment or the prod environment. So what you can do is use something like Doppler to store all of your secrets, centralized secret management without the chaos. You can create a bunch of secrets for dev environment, prod environment, local environment. And whenever a new developer joins, just give them access in Doppler. So whenever they're starting their Node.js process, they'll start it using Doppler. So all of their environment variables will get synced. So some companies use it. It's still debatable. Like we use this at Gather, but it creates like a heavy dependency, and also like you're putting out secrets to a third party. So that's the only reason you might be a little worried about it. But I think that's what you meant, and that's what they do. You don't pass. We don't. You told we have to pass variable in Docker we run. But what if there are multiple variables? Oh, there are other ways. Like what you actually do is, as I said, you inject environment variables sometimes through a file also, like you mount the .env file. What is mounting will come to. But easiest to answer your question is, okay, you can pass multiple environment variables as well. -e US user name equal to Harkirat. So now I've passed not just one but two environment variables. Let's try to see if that works. I think this does work. User underscore name. Taking a long time. I'll read. Oh, okay. Happened. Docker run. I have passing two environment variables. I am getting both the environment variables. I'm getting Harkirat. Oh no, wait. User underscore name. User underscore name. बाद में log किया है. नहीं आया. Console.log. Hi there. Let's try that one more. Oh wait, what process am I starting? I'm starting Hello World app. I started the wrong one. So let me kill this. Let me start the right process. That's 100x steps slash, what was it? Week 26 DevOps. So, and now as you can see, the first environment variable, the second environment variable. So you can pass in multiple environment variables like this. But as I said, no one does this. There's a different way to put in environment variables. Like depending on what you're using. If you're using something like ECR for deploying, ECS for deploying something like a container, then in the dashboard you can put the secrets or environment variables somewhere. If you're using Kubernetes, then you create a secret for storing that specific environment variable. So rarely do you do this, but take sure. For now, in your virtual machine, go and pass in the environment variables like this. What does a Docker extension do? I don't know, probably gives you colors over here, where did it go? Docker file gives you colors that I see, something like this. How does you? I'm not even sure if I have it. Or, probably will give you a run button that you can click on and it'll build the image, run the image. Think about internship or referral. This is for DevOps. Intern, that was, I don't know if that's full stack or not, but basically, yes, there is an intern role. It's in this company called RapidForge if you're interested. And 3 people have been referred from Super 30 there. But it's a DevOps role. Like there's a bare minimum requirement of knowing Kubernetes, maybe even Helm, because that was asked in the interviews. So if you think you know them, then go from there. Asking again, can I mail? Yes, you should mail HoneyDexDevs at gmail.com. They'll clear your Mountie, and you can't use crypto though. We'll have to pay you in INR. I directly use decrement in below index logic from database as I sweep from it balances deposit address to withdrawal address. I haven't implemented decrement. Just C can use Prisma decrement. That is fine. The problem wasn't that you're using decrement or you're, subtracting it. The problem was, let's see, you're fetching two requests, great. Um, Great. One. Perfect. That's very good. Very good. Increase their balance. Hold on. Let me tell you what the problem is here. Yeah. So this is fine. The problem is, you eventually have to run this. This is fine, by the way. This will work for one block as long as you're running this once. Run indexer runs main function. Where is the main function which does provided or get block number? So that's where the problem is. You have an infinitely running main loop, right? Sorry, where is this? Run indexer runs main. What is main doing? You don't have an infinitely running one. You're just doing it block by block. Yeah. So this too has a different problem, which is, I mean, you get it. You have to polls from starting of the blockchain, or maybe from the block where you started your uh, indexer or your project onwards. What this will do is when you run this, it will get the current block and check any transactions over there. And then let's say you didn't run it for 2 days. 2 दिन के सारे blocks miss हो गए. Then you run it again, you're getting the current block. You're missing a lot of the blocks in the middle. The problem that I was talking about was when you are getting a block and you are going through all this is great logic. You have two different RPCs, which is beautiful. You're updating the balance, that is greatish. So what happens is कि अगर 5 transactions थी मान लो in this block, and let's say 3 of them happened over here, and then your Node.js indexer stopped for some random reason, your database went down, your connection to database closed, तो आपने 3 तो बढ़ा दिए, 3 of them's balances you increased, 2 of them you did not increase. So how will you increase the other 2? You might restart the process. When you restart the process, what will happen? Again, the first 3 will have their balances increased, right? So for a single block, you might have to, when you do it twice, you increase a single user's balance more than once. You'll give them balance twice. So that problem still exists, right? You get the use case. Indexer आपने चलाया, for loop started. It happened for the first transaction, happened for the second transaction, process clashed. Now what will you do? You will restart it. कि हाँ भाई block miss हो गया. When you restart it, what will happen? You will give the first 2 transactions balances again. So do you understand the problem? The reason I'm fixating so much on this is real user balances. अगर यहाँ पे गलती हो गई, if a person deposited $100 to your exchange, but you gave him $200, then you're screwed. So that's why it's a problematic thing. Cool. I mean, looks good. It's like a chat application. That's great. Okay. What is the error? Can you show it to me? Bcrypt can't find module. I mean, just replace Bcrypt with a different one, right? If that is the case. I've done this in a video. There is a leaner version of Bcrypt. You don't have to install it. There's a file, copy to your code base and replace all the Bcrypt imports with that, and that should do it. Right. So what's the question? I'm trying to get in touch with my college is tier 3. Um, so how can I help? I have no Android referrals if that's what you're asking for. And what else do you have? Let's see here. Yeah, I would build some more projects other than, these projects. But other than that, I mean, yeah, nothing out of the, कहाँ गया? Nothing out of the ordinary that I can tell you here. Where did that Notion doc go? Sorry. I think that might be the one. I can't find it. But yeah, basically, what was the question? Projects को थोड़ा improve कर लो, and no immediate answer that I have for you other than keep coding or whatever, the same advice basically. All right, cool. Any other questions? Any questions related to the class? No. Right. I did followed you, Bounty. Did followed you? Oh, you followed everything we did. Great. Uh, you can switch from Frontier to. Oh, I can't access this Notion doc. Not able to deploy Docker image. While Notion doc I can't access. Can you make it public? I set my professor's portal password as my. Oh God, and I can change my grades. I am in IIT. Fucking beautiful. Calls for a good video, I say. Do you wanna get in touch on 100xF's Twitter? Would love to see what you've done, and then maybe build a video out of it. I'm not against colleges, but I'm just saying would be a good video. We will hide your identity, we'll hide the IIT, but this might be a great video. Don't do anything, by the way. Don't change your grades. I don't know if that's borderline illegal, but you have access to so many things which enjoy. But yeah, if you can ping 100xF's Twitter, or Ankur somehow get in touch with this email. And then, this calls for a great video that we can build. And, we can teach how to sniff. I'm sure this happens in every campus because it happened in our campus as well. So, in the process, everyone will become better. Colleges will get better, whatever systems. Argon is also an alternative to Bcrypt, but that will be, its APIs are a little different, so it will be a little hard to integrate in CMS. If you use a different version of Bcrypt or library that's compatible with Bcrypt, you just have to change imports and you're good to go. What was this? How same port container running on different PC ports? Is it running on different containers? I think what you're asking is how can different containers run the same port? And the answer is they are not taking the host machine's port. They are a mini machine in themselves, and they're taking a port on their port mapping. So amongst the many ports that they have, they're taking one port over there. All right. Bro knows what's leaked. I mean, I don't think anything is leaked, but there was a probability of something getting leaked. Tomorrow we will cover networks and volumes. It's in the slides. You can go through the slides and warm up for it as well. All right. Notion doc, this one's closed. Feel like I already saw this? No. Don't have access to this Notion doc. Depends on you really. If companies are रही and they'll ask DSA, then you should focus on DSA. This looks good. Can I ask it questions? I cannot. It's just not storing. That's still pretty good. Yeah, pretty decent. The UI isn't great, वैसे. मतलब you should fix that. For professionally, but I'm working on it for years. All right, let's look at your portfolio. Looks decent. Bunch of projects. That's also good. Why do I feel like I've seen this before? I think you already sent this to me, right? I could be wrong, but I feel like I've seen this one before. I don't know what this is. I don't know what this is either. Good hai, matlab, I mean, I don't see any red flags in the projects. I'm sure the code is good as well. I'm not looking through it. So I mean, yeah, pretty good. And keep doing what you're doing. Standard advice for everyone who's sharing portfolios here. सबके ठीक ही है भाई, मतलब. And if there's one that stands out, you will know. But everything that you're posting, brainy projects or whatever similar are great, and keep building them and maybe build something different. For example, the zoom in feature was pretty good. Whoever built that. So if you want to showcase a project, make it a little different than what's already built. Docker ho gaya, so I don't know, something related to Docker might be a good thing to build. For example, let me think. So one good project where Docker comes into the picture is something like Replit or something like LeetCode. So if you want to build your own code execution engine, then also Docker is a decent tool for that. That might be an impressive project to show. तो बेसिकली जो पढ़ाया जा रहा है उससे थोड़ा आगे जाके if you can build that will be great. बाकी जो बनाए हैं वो तो सेम ही है. I'm sure the code is very similar, the structure is very similar. And then there's something extra that you have to figure out to do something better. For example, the zoom in, zoom out thing that person did. Okay. So if you are showcasing projects, maybe have something extraordinary. For example, Pulkit had like a Vercel clone thing in his portfolio, which stood out immediately to me also. And जब उसका interview हुआ तो उसके interviewer ने भी सबसे पहले यही बोला कि Vercel वाला project बताओ क्या था. तो find such a slightly more advanced project and try to build it. Okay. Cool. We'll end it there, guys. Thank you so much for joining. I will see you guys next week. Have a good night. Oh, sorry, tomorrow. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye.